Hello everyone, my name is Helena Rother. I'm a native German speaker, and today I'd like to talk to you guys about some of the books that are very essential in understanding German culture and with which all of you can hopefully wow your teachers if you know what goes on, and hopefully it will spark your interest in learning about German literature or even reading some of these. So let's get started. So the first book I'd like to talk about is probably the most famous. It's Faust from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. And basically there are two tragedies happening at the same time. So there's one tragedy called the Gretchen-Tragödie and one tragedy called the Gelehrten-Tragödie, or the Wissen-Tragödie basically. So the first tragedy, the Gretchen-Tragödie, is between Faust's love to Gretchen. And Gretchen is this young, innocent girl who basically expresses innocence, and then that sort of goes away because Faust seduces her and then abandons her, and she ends up, I don't want to spoil anything, so sorry, but she ends up killing her child, and there's a trial, and she ends up losing her mind, and it's very horrible. And one question that is very, I don't know, I guess well known in the German language is the Gretchen question. And by the way, her name is Margaret or Margarete in the book. It's just the nickname is Gretchen, and Faust refers to her as Gretchen and everything. So this question is, what is your stand on religion? Because it is the question that Faust asks Margarete on their first date. Yes, so then the second tragedy in Faust is the Gelehrten-Tragödie, or the tragedy of not knowing everything, basically. So now there are obviously many different interpretations, but the way I understood it was that Faust, he studied a million things. He studied medicine and law and theology, and I'm sorry if I'm getting some of the details wrong, but basically he realizes that he doesn't know enough, and then he has some problems with his dad doing these medical experiments on people. So long story short, he makes a pact with the devil, and the devil promises him to show him everything there is to life, basically, like every adventure he could possibly dream of. And the only problem is that he can't stay at one place too long. So basically that leads him to abandon Gretchen, who then ends up, going crazy, and it's a very sad story. So the next book I want to talk about is this book called Emilia Galotti by Lessing. And basically what it is about is there's this girl named Emilia Galotti who again embodies innocence and purity, and what's important is that she's not part of the aristocracy, but her family is middle class. And then there's a prince, and he's basically very superficial, and he doesn't like to take responsibility, and he's just not a very good ruler. And what happens is this prince, he sees a picture of this girl named Amelia, and he's like, wow, that girl is beautiful. Oh, okay, I want to be together with her. Basically, that's what happens. And so then he and his friend, they chase, or they try to seduce this girl. And the problem is that this girl has a dad who's very very conservative, and he doesn't like the aristocracy. And so what happens is that there's this conflict, for one, between the aristocracy and basically the rest of the people, the citizens, and then on the other hand, this conflict of innocence versus non-innocence. And what actually ends up happening is that they end up at this, this palace of the prince, and the dad ends up killing his daughter because he thinks it's better for her to be dead than unpure. And it's a very sad story, but it has this class conflict as well as this like social conflict. So it's a very interesting book, and I definitely recommend. So the next book I'm going to present is Kleider, machen, Leute, and this is a book that I must admit I read very long ago, so I don't remember much of the details. But basically what happens is there's this guy, this tailor, who's the main character, and he dresses very well, but he doesn't have a lot of money. So he ends up going to this restaurant, and they mistake him for a duke, a Polish duke. And then what basically happens is he pretends to be this duke, and everything is fine. And he finds this girl, and they fall in love because, yeah, they do. And she's very rich and everything. So then what ends up happening is they end up being together in love, and then they end up getting engaged. And then I believe it's at the engagement party that the town finds out that he's not actually a duke. So then he tries to flee, and his bride-to-be is she follows him into the snow, and it's snowing, and they almost, the bride almost freezes, so he saves her, and then they prove their love to each other, and they both survive, and everything is nice, and then they marry, and then the tailor ends up opening a tailor shop from the money of his bride, like his wife. So everything is nice, and yes, so basically this book again is between this class conflict and how important superficial things are when judging people, and it's basically the moral of the story is not to judge people. And though I found it quite hard to read, I read it quite early. It was early middle school, so I believe that this book is better to start out than something like Faust, because the vocabulary is easier, and it's classic, and you'll seem very smart